on the email that we got, Diane Cox just let me know that Jameson that's going to have the jaw surgery, that's going to be tomorrow instead of the 21st. So we need to keep him in our prayers, that jaw surgery. And also our brother-in-law is home from rehab. Both of the Hatfields have upcoming procedures. Brother Turner's doing his rehab. Alicia Tanner, a friend of Robert Golden, is having surgery to remove brain tumor on Thursday. And Bobby Powell, a friend of Robert's, has been diagnosed with cancer and been given just a short period of time to live. This says 3 months. And then Judy Ingram is still struggling with her illnesses. And also Emma, how is Emma?
She was better. We got her out Thursday, got her out yesterday. She started running fever again. It's sinus. The medication she's on, does not allow her to be a candidate for allergy testing. So she's had some genetic testing done to see if we can find anything that will better for her. We'll get that for next month. But hers is just day-to-day.
So keep Emma in your prayers with the sinuses. Also, we had mentioned that Holly Sadler, Jay's wife, is going to have a major back surgery on the 8th and 10th of November. They're going to wind up fusing 9 vertebrae together. So it's going to be a 2-stage process, taking out old hardware, putting in some different hardware, and then going in and putting in the rods later. So keep them in your prayer. Also, our son-in-law, Brent Walker, is going to be having surgery Wednesday at the Cancer Center in Atlanta. He has a tumor in the roof of his mouth. The latest scan shows that it has not gotten into the bone yet, that it's just going to be in the roof of the mouth, but it's still going to require some grafting to go along with that. He's also requested no phone calls because she's not going to be able to talk and or not talk very well, and also no cards. If you want to check on him, our daughter Jana, hers information, email and all is in the directory. You can just send a word to Jana and she can respond to that. And also this Wednesday, Brother Terry is going back for his second eye procedure to take care of the other eye on the cataract. So let's keep him in our thoughts and prayers. And Bobby is still recuperating from back surgery, but everything seems to be going in the right direction. Okay. Is there anyone else that we, talked to Rosie this morning, and Tina is doing some better, so just hope she keeps going in the right direction. Jason, don't some of your family have a procedure coming up shortly, or? Just, I mentioned the in-laws, but that's all right now. Okay. Anything else in the way of the sick? Brother David, would you lead us in a prayer?
Heavenly Father, we're so thankful for this day that you bless us with. A beautiful Lord's Day, Father, that we can gather in this place to worship you. We are thankful, Father, and mindful of the help that we do have, and we're appreciative of it. It's a blessing from you each and every day. We wait to share that. We are mindful of those who mentioned who are less fortunate than we are as far as health is concerned. Continue to think of those and their families and the doctors and nurses that are tending to them, and give them the knowledge to be able to do those things, to make them comfortable, to heal them, to help them return to their normal life. Whatever, Father, is within our week. We ask his name we pray. Amen.
And as I had mentioned the very first class, and forgot to mention it last week, any of the men that want to participate, want to teach one of these lessons, if you just let me know, you can sit up here and teach one of them. We got several left to go, so gotten a little bit behind, so we're going to start on page 5 under General Organization. That's chapter 2, and we're going to do our best to get through chapter 2 and 3 today, which would get us caught back up. But in the General Organization, we've been talking about visitation, and actually there's 2 phases of visitation that we need to look at. There's one that all Christians are supposed to do on their own, take care of watching out and taking care of their neighbors and friends and fellow Christians. And then there is an organized visitation program. So just because right now we're talking about the organized program, that doesn't mean that you should stop doing what you're doing now or not do what you're doing now. That this is strictly in addition to that. So, but it's talking about for an organized program to work well, it starts with the eldership, and that's where we had gotten last week, down to number A. On page 5, it says that the elders are to support, encourage, participate, and pray for the program. Is it just the elders' responsibility to do all that? If it's going to be an effective program, everybody needs to do that. However, since the eldership is the eldership, yeah, it is supposed to set the example and do those things. Item B says it is to select the leaders and workers involved in every phase of the program. We discussed this briefly last week, that each congregation is different. There are small congregations, large congregations. There are congregations that are very geographically close. Andrea and I attended a congregation when we was in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, that the church in the area, if the northernmost family wanted to visit the southernmost family, it was a 45-mile drive, because it being on the coast, north and south, it was, and there was only one solid church in that community. So the things that they do naturally is they couldn't have, well, like this end of the month, we're all going out to Brother Kyle's there for a party. The people in Myrtle Beach, the northernmost people, or the southern, whichever, wouldn't have a party at their house because it was so far for everybody to go. So everything was taking place at the building. So you have to work with not only the numbers of people you've got, but the geography of the people, and also the demographics. What do I mean by demographics of a congregation? Primarily age. When you get into demographics, you get into all the other issues of social, financial, and all like that. But I'm primarily talking about the age of people. If you're dealing with a congregation that has a whole lot of young people versus a whole lot of us middle-aged folks, you deal differently with things. So all of these things need to be taken into consideration when you're trying to put together a program that works for an individual congregation. Yes, sir.
It doesn't mention it here, at least I couldn't find it when I was looking at this lesson, but a lot of times when a congregation has a full-time preacher, everybody thinks that's his job.
That's correct. And that is not mentioned anywhere in here, but, well, to this point. I don't read ahead, I only take the lessons as they come, but to this point, they haven't mentioned that, but you are correct. Many congregations think it's the preacher's responsibility to do all this. What position does, since you mentioned it, what position does a preacher have in a congregation? Pardon?
Because our preacher is an elder.
Our preacher is an elder, but just as the preacher function, what role does he have just as the preacher? Well, I shouldn't say just as, but I think you know what I'm saying. Brother Terry has been our preacher for 20 years. Does he have any more authority to the running of this congregation than anybody else just because he preaches? He is a member of this congregation that preaches. Now that he is an elder, now we put him in the position of being an elder and overseer.
We're
But
so blessed that we have so many of those men in this congregation that can be members and preach just like Terry does.
so, and the denominational world takes this a little bit to the other end, where they're so organized that they will tell a local congregation who their preacher is going to be, and that preacher has the authority to basically run the congregation, which, yes, sir.
He doesn't, and I don't know why he doesn't give the passage that's in quotations as far as when they begin with the elders, watch in behalf of your souls. But it's Hebrews 13:17. In my mind, an earlier one, verse 7 would have probably been more appropriate, because he says, whose faith follow. That is, if an eldership, each of us are not going to be involved in it as well and being a part of it, then how's that going to affect others? They're saying, well, it's not important to the elders, so why should it be important to me?
That is correct.
Question.
Yes.
Do all congregations have elders?
Not all congregations have elders. There are some congregations, for a variety of reasons, they're either too small a congregation, they don't have enough men qualified to be elders, and they run those congregations, and some of them are sound. I've attended some of them, and it's they run them out of a committee that all the men of the congregation have monthly meetings, and those would be set up a little bit differently. And they can still have a formal visitation program.
When I was younger, we used to go to Midway. I don't know if y'all remember that membership. Did we have elders and deacons at Midway? Yeah, we had them later after the left. Just a little while. Yeah. I didn't think we did at Midway. That's all I was at, but I was just a child, so I don't know.
Yeah. Well, matter of fact, this congregation, when Andrew and I first started here in 1985, we had elders. Then we didn't have elders, and then in '94, we've had elders since '94. So, then when number C says consult when needed with supervisors and team captains. Again, this goes into the organization and the elders being in the overseer position there. If we get this started in January the way we intend to, we don't know at this point how many levels of supervision there will be, whether there will be supervisors, as they call this, or a deacon over the program, or a team captain. It just depends on how we organize. Yes, sir.
I think you sort of got the cart before the horse here on this one, because you don't know how it's going to be organized completely, and he doesn't go into any definition as far as
Right.
the roles of these individuals.
And that is covered a little bit more specifically when we get to the next chapter. And then it says, make specific suggestions about implementing the plans. Why would they tell the elders to make suggestions on how to implement the plan?
Contrary to belief, we don't know everything, and somebody might have a better idea than we do.
That is correct. There are many, well, most times, well, I'll go even farther. Almost always there are more than one way to do something and do it right. You might prefer to do it this way and it be right, and I might prefer to do it this way and it be right. What works best for this spot right here? So and that's why we're having this class and talking about this, because you listen, you learn, and you make all those suggestions and pull them together to put an effective plan in place. Yes, sir?
Just looking around, think about, have people from Tennessee, how many different congregations have come from there to here that might have had plans in effect that give ideas and suggestions as far as, hey, it worked here, it worked there.
Yeah, look at David Howard, Germany, Virginia, Florida, here, me, Arizona, Arkansas, Philippines, South Carolina, here. So yeah, you take what works and you put away what don't work. And then it says, give assistance needed in making of the assignments. Well, that again is just a little bit of the overseeing part. Next page, page 6, it says, next go to the congregation. Well, see, we've already started doing that. We started doing this at the very beginning to get you included. Again, it says, once the elders have given their approval to the work the next step is to sell the program. And this is, again, where I have a little bit of aggravation with that word sell, because most people want to take a connotation of a hard sell or a push, and in reality the word just means that when you show the benefit of something, then the other person either accepts or rejects the benefit. Yes, sir? Oh, sorry.
I kind of look at it, you know, and it's a worldly term, but you do it in business, you do it in your family, you gotta get the congregation to buy in and get them involved.
Just persuade them, that's basically what it is.
And again, persuasion to me, since we're talking about scriptural matters, is we put out the facts of the Bible, and then it's there for your taking.
I like the term commitment.
Commitment.
Better than sell. We present it to the congregation, and we as a congregation commit to not buy in, not sell, not, because those terms seem to be more a forcible persuasion.
Yes, sir.
We, as a group of people, as a group of believers, have committed to this program. We've chosen to do it, not we were convinced to do it.
I'm glad you phrased it that way, because if you really sit back and look at it, the day you became a Christian, what did you commit to? Following Christ. Your decision of commitment was made the day you become a Christian. So all the rest of this should just fall into place, the way I see it anyway. But then it says that we're to use the pulpit, and it's a way just to get the message out. Bulletin board, bulletins, etc. A word of endorsement and encouragement from the elders will help greatly. That should be understood. At the same time,
Why does that even have to be in the book? That just what gets me.
well, I was going to go at it a little bit different tack, but doesn't a word of encouragement from everybody work? Why is it specifically the elders that need to be?
And it kind of makes it sound like the elders may or may not be on board when you do it.
There you go. And then,
Part of guiding the flock too.
I'm sorry?
It's part of guiding the
Oh,
flock
yes, sir.
as well, so.
Yes, sir. It's part of our responsibility to guide. Item D says the teachers of the adult class, which we're doing right now, should be asked to mention the importance. The book is written, I suppose, based on this one paragraph here, is that the people that are reading this book are going to be the elders, and they're going to be off in this room, and now they're going to come in and tell you, the congregation, we've decided we're going to do this. Now we're going to involve you. And like I say, we've taken this from a whole different point of view. Everybody is into the book from the very beginning. And then it says, enroll the visitation volunteers. When you feel that the congregation is sold on the need of such a program, pass out enrollment cards for visitation volunteers, and here's a sample of the card. Well, the way, and we haven't got this thing totally gelled together about what we're going to do in January, but I'd mentioned that we're going to divide up into teams. And those teams are basically to help look out and take care of each other in smaller groups. Start functioning this way. But when it says enroll volunteers, if we, the deacons, and just for sake of argument, this is divided up into 4 sections here. Group 1, Group 2, Group 3, Group 4. Within each one of those groups, there are going to be people with varying degrees of knowledge, varying degrees of abilities, and varying desires, all the way from, I don't want to do this, to, hey, I'm fully engaged. So within each of those groups, if you're going to set up, as this card down here says, a visitation program for sick and shut-ins, delinquent members, newcomers to town, prospects for conversion, and others who visit our areas. Brother Dave, I'm not putting you on the spot, but you have already said that you don't like going to nursing homes. So, it's not that you won't go, but if you had this list to look at, and should I give you a card to say, you go visit nursing homes? Or should I give you a card to say, how about delinquent members, or one of your stronger suits, newcomers or prospect? You know, the eldership at this location, anyway, ever since I've been here, our primary goal is to help each individual of the congregation grow to their maximum potential in all phases. At the same time, that does not mean that we should intentionally put you outside your comfort zone. When you feel ready to go outside your comfort zone and learn and grow, we can work with you. But in the meantime, if I tell you, I'm not running these programs, by the way, we'll probably put the deacons in charge, but if a deacon gives you a card that says, you go visit people at the nursing home, not real comfortable doing that. Would you volunteer to do that? Or would you volunteer to send cards to the sick and shut-ins? Or would you volunteer to do this? Or would you volunteer? See, there's got to be a way to work in, I'll volunteer to do everything on this list, but this is the last thing I'd like to do.
Sort of an order of preference.
Order of preference. Because the quickest way to turn somebody off is have them repeatedly do something that they're not comfortable with and don't want to do. And the quickest way to get people involved, fully involved, is to let them do the things that they are good at and prefer to do. Again, as you go along, you move them into a little bit less comfortable position to help them grow, but you don't shut them out the door immediately by giving them assignments that they are not going to do. Yes, sir?
I know the stress here is on personal, is one-on-one as far as face-to-face with each other.
Yes, sir.
But even within the scriptures, there were different ways that things were taken care of. Paul wrote letters to congregations to ask how they were and see how they were doing. Other times he sent other people to do it. He prayed about them. So there's a number of different ways that we can be involved. It's not just necessarily going individually, though that's the emphasis or the ultimate
Have you ever heard of a chain prayer? A chain prayer? We was at one location where I don't remember the exact situation, but we did it on 2 occasions. One, we was going to have a gospel meeting, and the men of the congregation would sign up for a 30-minute section for a 24-hour period. So for 24 hours, there was a prayer going on. Now, we didn't call each other and say, hey, I'm done, it's your time to take over. If I'd signed up for 10:30 at night, when 10:30 rolled around, I started. I don't know if the other fellow had finished or not. And when my time was up and I quit, I don't know if the other fellow kicked in or not. But supposedly, if you sign up for that slot and do that slot, we had a prayer going for 24 hours consecutively for the meeting that was about to take place. And then we did it when somebody was really, really, really sick. So, you know, there's a multitude of ways you can do things. But my question on this, after I'd read all this, is that since programs need to be tailored to each congregation, on this card, do we need to add things or do we need to delete things? In other words, sick shut-ins, delinquent, new members, newcomers, prospects for conversion, others who visit our services. Is there anything that we need to add to this card?
Yes. You need to add people who are in need, that are sick of the congregation, that you need your help. So that needs to be added, I would think.
Do you think that's not covered under sick and shut-ins? When you go visit, you find out the needs and take care of the needs?
Well, I thought that was pretty much a general thing,
Okay.
but specifically, you know, but if it's addressed that way, then that's fine.
Well, how about keeping that thought in the back of you? Well, put it in the front lobe there so we can get to it when we get down to specifics. And if we find out that we're not covering that, then that's definitely but what we had discussed last week and the week before was a visit. If you see something needs to be done and you don't do it, you really hadn't made a visit. A visit means to observe and act on what you find. So, yes, sir.
I'll ask this while we're here. Is there a way to find out who moves into town now? Used to, you could get a list of the new water cut, you know, water was cut on, or the power was cut on, they just give you a list of all the new people in your area, and you could go and call, you could call the local hospitals, and they'd say, here's the 5 pieces, you know, members who say they're members of the church, who were in the hospital at this time. Now somebody, you know, it's all privacy issues now, you can't get any of that stuff.
I'm going to have to ask my wife that question. She worked at the water system for 30-something years, so currently it's not something. It's privacy. They can't do that anymore.
That was very, very helpful.
It was.
Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
you could make contact with realtors that are members of the church, because I know one that goes to Colorado. And if they sell homes to members or to people that are interested, that may be a way to contact.
Okay. Do you hear that?
I wonder if that's legal, yeah.
I don't know if that's.
It would obviously have to be with the permission of the person that bought the house, but,
There are companies online that you can purchase it from.
Okay.
We discussed it before, we live in a difficult situation because we have so many different zip codes that are so close. Usually that's normally how they want to combine it,
Okay.
where you can because you can ask, well, I want 20 names or I want 40 names, maybe from each one of them. It can be done, I don't know the expense now.
We can work on that when we start getting down to specifics, but apparently there will be a way we can. And I was just thinking, just some records are public records. You could go to the courthouse and find out who bought a house and who,
You gotta be careful with that too.
Yeah.
In the sense that these people might value their privacy, and if
Yep.
you come to them to visit without being invited, that could be problematic as well. Could
Yeah.
push them away.
that's also true.
I think from that standpoint, it can be handled in an easy way. You see a house that has a for sale sign up in it, and then you see the sold sign. Next time you see somebody, just go over and introduce yourself, tell them who you are.
Like our neighborhood puts on a thing, it says, we have new members in our neighborhood, you know, we welcome so-and-so, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, you know, sometimes we'll tell you where they are, and our neighborhood takes like little welcome baskets to the new people and things like that, so you could be kind of aware of your own little neighborhood and reach out to people maybe.
Number 4 says, selecting the visitation supervisor. This is assuming that this congregation has somebody in that role. Like I said, the way we're looking and the size we're looking at, odds are this is going to be one of the deacons. But it says, the part that I want to emphasize is that if it's one of the deacons or whoever is put in that position, it says they need to be sincere and zealous, and when it gets down to the last line, sold on the program, I go along with Bobby on that. I'd rather see it commitment, and I'd also put down the note, have a positive attitude, because if somebody has a negative attitude about something, they lost from the very beginning.
Then they weren't really committed to begin with.
And they wasn't committed to begin with. Page 7. It just says the visitation supervisor will coordinate the entire program, and it will be his responsibility to work under and with the elders to ensure that every phase of the work is carried out smoothly. Specifically, his job will be work directly with the team captains, and again, this is probably, for the size of our congregation, going to be a combined role. The way that I don't think we're large enough that we need a deacon for a supervisor and then a team captain or two under them. I think that we're small enough that would be a combined role, but that's just me thinking right up here as we're getting this ready. But work directly with the group. Assist in the compiling of a weekly visitation list and in the making of visitation assignments from this list. Now, Brother David Conyers said something that is very important that I want to bring up at this point. One of the first things I said was that a good visit, you needed to know the people, know who you're visiting. And I brought up my aunt that you could do anything in her house but stay out of her kitchen. Well, if we're combining list to visit people, how many of those people are going to be receptive, and who are they going to be receptive to if they are not a faithful member? How receptive are they going to be at other visitations and things going on? So this is an area that is going to require a lot of thought and a lot of I can't even think the word I'm looking for right now, but yeah, we got to be careful in that area. Keep a record of the visits assigned and see what they are made. See that they are made or reassigned. Now, a lot of people have a negative outlook when you keep records, whether it be attendance records or anything else. But if you're doing this in the spirit of being a Christian, record keeping is very, very beneficial. I had mentioned last week that the program that we work with, if Bobby, for instance, had made a visit to this person and I didn't know that person and I've got the card to go visit them next week, rather than walk in cold, if they've been visited 2 or 3 times and Bobby had written down the note, well, the guy really likes fishing and the lady likes to cook and here's where they are on these issues. And then I'd had a comment from somebody before. I'm not walking into that place cold. I've got a starting point for my visit. It makes me a little bit more comfortable to go knock on the door because I at least know some of their likes, dislikes, a way to approach them. For instance, if I went and knocked on Glenda's door and said, "Boy, didn't Auburn do great last night?" I'm out the door, but I'm out the door before I get started.
And also, I mean, it works the other way too. We're not supposed to waste our time on those who are really, that we don't have to judge on that occurrence, but those that will not be receptive at all, you don't want to keep on going.
Mm-hmm. But keeping the records and doing things and because remember the scripture that talks about doing things organized. Actually, the verse is decently and in order. Maintain permanent record for every visit made. Again, this is for benefit of everybody, not to go back later and say, you missed 12 services last year. That's not the point. But help encourage and push the work at all times, especially in helping each team to keep the work moving. It's all about doing what is good for everybody involved. Be informed of the complete visitation program, keeping check on its progress in order to report the work to the elders. That's why we decided to have this 3-month class before the program even starts, because if you know the whole thing, it helps. Questions or comments then before we get to the next item? Yes, ma'am.
Is this program is for internal and external?
Right.
Is that, do we have, because I was kind of thinking, because I was out for a couple weeks sick, and I reached out and let people know I was sick, but is there anything in place currently with like the elders or the deacons, or is this something that's going to happen with this program where you're over people who are A to D?
Well,
David's over people who, and from F to L. I mean, is there something in place currently where you guys can say, hey, we haven't seen so-and-so?
there is not a good program in place right now. That's why we're wanting to do this. And again, we haven't got all of it gelled and put together, but in essence, this is your team. They know you're sick. It is first, they're going to take care of your needs, but if it's something long, they are not totally responsible, because if they need to coordinate with this team to get some help, then they coordinate. You know, if somebody is on an extended sickness where they can't take care of things that's going to require more than a meal or two, 1/4 of the congregation is not expected to take care of that, share the duties. But they're there for the immediate thing. And also, with you being on this team, I'm using you as the example, this group gets together maybe once a month or so just to get to know everybody better. And if you want to invite this group to join you sometime, so now these can grow, and then this one later. It's all about getting everybody more involved and getting to know each other better and taking care of needs. Pardon?
Tighten the family.
Tighten the family. That's a good phrase, tighten the family. Yes, sir.
not necessary to have an organization plan in place. We ought to be able to do this on our own. We see that there was a neglect in Acts chapter 6 when it came to taking care of the widows.
All right.
And so they organized something in order to take care of that need. And so that just further aids in getting the job done to make sure there isn't a neglect so that something isn't overlooked. And so it can be, but an organization is a good way to do it.
Yes, sir.
Like you said earlier there, and you mentioned just then, if we have a group, say we have group A, we have 15, 20 people in that group, and we're, paying attention to who's out, who needs something, we send those, our little group sends cards to each other, hey, we missed you, call you. But if you're already in the habit of, you know, somebody's been out for a couple of days, send them a card, hey, we missed you, or they're sick, but get well soon, send them a card, a little note in there. That's not gonna stop us from sending something to, group B, C, and D either.
That's correct.
Don't keep your cards coming, that's what I'm saying.
Where it talks about select the team captains, I think I want to skip that section totally because we're dealing again with a smaller organization, not knowing exactly how it's going to be worked, except everybody in the leadership roles and all, they need to be committed to the program, positive attitude, ready to work. Item number 6, the visitation volunteer. And I love the way they phrased this. And you got to remember this book was written in 1990 now. So when it uses man in 1990 was a generic term meaning mankind, male or female. So don't get 2022 on me and go psycho. The visitation volunteer, this is the most important person in the whole operation. All the organization in the world is useless unless the team member makes the assigned visit. I'd said this earlier that we need to also try to put the people in their stronger suits and work them into the less comfortable instead of going the other way around. Because if the visit is not made, the weak link in the chain broke. It's ineffective.
Could we use Nehemiah as far as the leaders, him and Zerubbabel and Ezra? But it took all the people working around the wall to get the wall finished. So those individual members are valuable.
That is correct, and if we want to take it all the way back, we can go to Ezra 7:10 or 10:7. I can never remember it, even though I know the verse. He purposed in his heart before he did anything. So if we purpose in our heart to do it, then it'll be done right. Now, some of their specific duties are make the assigned visit within the allotted time if possible. Now, as we get down into some of the specifics, I didn't get caught up. I got 1 minute left. But make the assigned visit in the allotted time. When we get down to the next chapter, it's getting into specifics. They're talking about either having an assigned day of the week as a visitation program or other ways. And when it says within the allotted time, a lot of it has to depend on how that's organized. And with everybody working different schedules and all this, that's something we need to take into account. Make a brief report of the visit or the visitation assignment card. Return it to the team captain. Leave proper literature with the person visited. Again, that's very subjective. You got to know who you're visiting, the purpose of the visit, their needs, their whatever. Boost the visitation program with participation and prayer. And cooperate in every way possible. And I'm going to go back to what Brother David Day said earlier. A lot of this for a Christian should not even have to be written here. It should be understood from the get-go that this is what's to take place. But this book is written more or less as an outline or a guide to make sure that we remember the things that we're supposed to do. Yes, sir?
Many congregations have something they call Monday for the Master, and that's usually because the sooner the better. If something comes up on Sunday, you have visitors, you find out about somebody sick, the quicker that you can respond to it, whether it is even Sunday, but they normally say, well, we'll do it on Monday because that's the closest to time period.
And when we get into some of the specifics, some of them like to do it on Thursday. Friday and Saturdays are horrible times to do things. So it's either Monday or Thursday, and they like to do it on Thursday because if they're trying to encourage somebody to attend, it's closer to the following Sunday. So a lot of that just has to be worked out. When it gets to some general comments, it says the enactment of a planned program of visitation is not meant as an indictment of anyone. We've already covered this, I said it earlier, but it's meant to help people learn and grow. And then page 8 shows some of the visitation cards, the way that they're set up. All of this can be discussed as to, well, I don't see any issues with the front side because you need to know who you're visiting, where they are, and everything else. But the back side of the card then needs to be a space to write on and how the visit went, what you did, what you didn't do, and all like that. And so until the bell rings, there were 4 questions. What can the elders do to assure a successful program? Get involved, participate. I'm sorry?
Some kind of organization.
Well, specifically, the book told us that they were to encourage, pray, participate, and support. To me, support is one of those words out there that if you're doing the other 3 things, you are supporting. So I don't know. But anyway, number 2 is what are some ways that the congregation can be sold as to the importance of the program?
Tie it in with the word.
I am not trying to sell you on the program. I am trying to teach you the Bible principle when we're up here today. If you understand God's basic principle of how things are to be done, and as Bobby has said, you have committed, that's it.
Larry, I think out of that question, the word importance is the most valuable because all of us have different importance as far as different things go.
Yep.
We see the value of souls, it should be an easy quote sale.
Yes, sir. And what are some of the qualities that you would consider essential for a good visitation supervisor, captain, leader?
I'll go back to commitment again.
Committed?
Someone who wants to do it, who's zealous about it.
Positive attitude, committed, or dedicated, and eager, zealous. And discuss the importance of keeping adequate records in the program. Why should there be good records?
I think we were discussing to go back and make it easier again.
Well, number 1, you know the visit was made. Number 2, it helps the next it sets up the next visit. And then number 3, it keeps things orderly. That's the 3 I put down. I see people coming in. So I will try, if nobody else wants to teach next week, I'll try to get caught up in chapter 3 and chapter 4. Thank y'all so much for your attention and comments.